All right, welcome to the educational series on long-term care planning and insurance. Let me introduce myself to you before we jump right into the educational information. My name is Michael Fitzpatrick, and I've been specializing in long-term care planning and insurance since 2001. Co-founded the LTC Partnership, helped over 1,000 families create a long-term care plan. I've also earned my CLTC, which stands for Certified in Long-Term Care designation. I'm an advisory board member of the American Association for Long-Term Care Insurance. I'm a speaker, a writer, and a coach, and I love helping people through education. What I've done is I've actually broken down the educational information for you into 5 separate sections. The first one we're going to talk about today is the topic of longevity. Demographic trends are happening all around us, and it's important to be ahead of the curve, but longevity is one of those issues that I don't think that you need me to tell you is going on. In fact, everywhere we look, we see something about the issues of aging all over the place. Now, it comes back to the issue of the boomers, where between 1946 and 1964, there was about 78 to 80 million people that were born during that period of time. And as you probably recall from the video, I liken it to watching the boomers as like a basketball traveling through a garden hose. And if you just take a quick look here again, Gerber, which was a tiny little company that nobody had ever heard of, all of a sudden sold 1.6 billion jars of baby food because they were just ahead of the basketball. And all of a sudden, then Mattel and Hasbro developed all these board games for these kids to play with as they grew older. Then you had McDonald's and Dairy Queen and KFC. And then guess what? Whoever was born on January 1st, 1946, 17 years later, all of a sudden turned 17 and got their driver's license. So there was about 8,000 to 10,000 people that were turning 17 every day for almost 20 years straight. And that's why Ford and Chevy and Oldsmobile experienced such a huge boom in their sales during those years. And then those boomers moved home, again, as you probably saw in the video, and their parents kept saying, if you live under my roof, you have to abide by my rules. And so they all went out and pursued the American dream and became homeowners. So now the basketball has traveled all the way over to the other side of the garden hose here. And Lincoln Financial Group published an interesting chart years ago that if you start on the far left-hand side here, when we're born, we have a total dependency for all of our needs. And as we get older, we strive towards independence. And then as we approach death, whether it's through an accident at a younger age or if it's through frailty by living a long life, all of a sudden we revert back to needing some form of dependence again. However, in our mind, we never lose the desire to maintain that independence that we actually achieved at one point in our life. So that's really the struggle here for a lot of folks, is that we end up in situations where we become dependent, but we have this mental desire to maintain our independence as long as possible. So why has long-term care really become the subject of the day? Well, primarily because people don't die. Now, we know people die, but they're not dying of the same types of illnesses and conditions that would have killed us in the quote-unquote good old days. Think about for a second, if you 50 years ago had a heart attack or cancer or a stroke, generally what happened to those people 50 years ago? Exactly, they all passed away for the most part. But think about how far we've come and our chances of surviving those death sentences today. So why has all this occurred? Well, probably a lot of these things you're already familiar with. Technology and medical advancements, prescription drugs, health and wellness initiatives, the tobacco crackdown. All of this has contributed into helping us live a longer life. But if you go back to 1935, what would you guess the average life expectancy was back then? Go ahead, you can jot down a number if you have a pad there. The answer is actually about 58 years of age for men and 62 years of age for females. Now, in 1935, that's the same year that they introduced Social Security, which was a government program that provided people income forever and ever and ever until they died. And even back then, the age that it started was still age 65. But think about that. The average male lived to 58 and the average female is 62. So they were already 7 or 3 years predeceased before they even got their first paycheck on average. There was 50 people that were contributing into the system for every one person that was collecting on the back end. And boy, has that changed quite a bit over the years because of this topic of longevity. So carrying on there with a little quiz, what do you think the average life expectancy is of women today? Well, here's a picture of longevity. Actually, 86 years is the average life expectancy for females today, according to the socialsecurity.gov. And this is a picture of longevity. This is actually my roommate in the yellow shirt, Jay, from college, and this is his grandmother, Flash, who was doing a headstand at our college graduation up at Fairfield University in Connecticut. And Jay had told us for years about Flash and her ability to do these headstands in her early to mid-80s, and obviously nobody believed him, so when Flash came to school, she showed us up and she let us know that even as a senior, she was ready to go. And so this is how seniors see themselves today. But the fact of the matter is that females are living till about 86 years of age. How about the average life expectancy for men today? It's actually about 39. No, I know. I'm just kidding. You have to have a little levity with the subject of long-term care. But men live till about 82. And Albert Einstein has an interesting quote where he says, "It's become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. And we want to make sure that we not only have the years in our life, but that we have the life in our years where we have quality on the back end as well." You know, when it comes to this topic about long-term care planning and long-term care insurance, it really is all about perspective. This is actually my favorite artist, Norman Rockwell, and this painting is called a triple self-portrait. And he sees himself in this picture. He's about 70 years of age when he's doing the painting, but he's putting himself on the canvas as if he's about 45 or 50 all over again. And so when it comes to long-term care planning, there really are two different schools of thought process, or two different perspectives, I should say. Some people that I've encountered over the last 10 plus years, when the topic of long-term care comes up, they say things like, "Oh, I kill myself instead," or "My kids will take care of me," or "I hate insurance companies," or "It's never going to happen to me," and things of that nature. Now, other people I talk to say things like, "I really want to protect and preserve the assets and the resources that I've been able to save up until now. And I don't want to spend all my money on the cost of my care. I certainly don't want to become a burden to people that I love and care about. And I want to really have choices and control, and I want to have dignity. So if it costs a little bit of money, to have that peace of mind, they call that a SWAN account, a sleep well at night account. But to have that peace of mind, if it costs X, then so be it. It's a form of protection." Now, I'm not saying that it's a right or wrong, but they're just two different perspectives. And quite frankly, if you're the first thought process, there's not a whole lot I can do for you. I mean, if you don't think that having a plan makes sense for you, then that's okay. That's your prerogative. But if you believe that long-term care is something that makes sense to pursue and think about and learn more about and possibly even have a plan in place before something happens, then certainly I can work with you to help you figure out which options might make the most sense, for you and your family. So a couple quick facts that are important to look at. Number one, there's about 15 million people that are currently receiving long-term care right now in our country. And that number is obviously rapidly growing. Now, 82% of those people are actually receiving care at home or in some sort of assisted living facility, and only 18% are receiving care in a nursing home. So one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is they think that this is for nursing home coverage, and the reality is that most long-term care doesn't take place in a nursing home. So we're really not talking about nursing home, we're talking about care, which could be really anywhere. And the last bullet point here was really the most alarming. When I first got into this business, I thought this really was a product that was more for older people. And then what I realized quickly was that almost half of the people who need care right now, of the 15 million, are actually working age adults between the ages of 18 and 64. So this is obviously not just for old people. Now, former First Lady Rosalind Carter has a wonderful quote as well, and she says there are four kinds of people in the world. There's those that have been caregivers, there's those who are currently caregivers, there's those that will be caregivers, and there's those who will need caregivers. So you probably fall into one of those four groups because there's not many more groups outside of those four. The issues that we're dealing with, however, both in the country and also in the states and also probably within our families, is twofold. Number one is we have people who are currently in crisis mode who are trying to plan when there's no time to plan. And then we have the 78 to 80 million baby boomers that are coming up behind them. Now, the current problem are all the people who have benefited from this increased technology and this health and wellness stuff over the last 30 or 40 years, and they're kind of like the guinea pigs, but we've just scratched the tip of the surface of the iceberg here over the last 20 or 30 or 40 years. And if you look down below, the real problem is what's kind of upon us. So when people are in crisis mode, think about the person in the middle of the figure on the left-hand side here. Think about yourself for a second. If something were to happen to you, if you were to come down with Alzheimer's or a stroke or some sort of an accident, or you had an aneurysm or adult onset diabetes with amputations, or I don't know, anything that could happen possibly, the fact of the matter is that it's not going to be your problem. It's really going to be the people on the peripheral's problem. It's going to be the spouse or the son, the daughter, the sibling, the friend, the aunt, the uncle, the coworker, all the people that try to come to our rescue to help out. So people who are in crisis mode, if something were to happen to you, it's really not going to be your issue. So doing long-term care planning is really planning for all those people that are on the peripheral, not really for ourselves, because we'll be taken care of, most likely, just at what cost, financially or emotionally, to the people that we care about the most. Now, on the other side, we have the proactive planners. We have these boomers that are very uncertain about Social Security. A lot of them don't have pension plans from their employers, which was guaranteed income from when they retire till when they die. They have to have enough money to last for possibly 30 years in a retirement, and oftentimes now they're providing 15 to 20 hours per week of uncompensated care. So the issues of longevity are very important to be aware of, and what we're going to cover in the next video is about what long-term care really is, what options you have, how you can customize a plan, and the sample costs. So thank you very much for your time in the first video here, and we'll carry it on section number 2.